You know, when we talk about breastfeeding, the conversation often stops after a few months. But what if I told you that's not the end of the story? Not even close. We're about to dive into the hidden and frankly surprising science of what happens next.
You hear it all the time, right? This idea that after about 6 months, breast milk is, well, it's more for comfort than nutrition, that it kind of becomes watered down, less valuable. But what if that whole idea is just completely wrong?
Well, it turns out a growing pile of evidence points to the exact opposite. Far from losing its value, breast milk actually gets more potent. It transforms into something even more powerful for a growing toddler.
And that brings us to what you could call breast milk's second act, its absolutely crucial role after solid foods enter the picture.
And when you look at the numbers, you see this huge gap. In the US, sure, a lot of infants, over 83%, start out breastfeeding. But by that 6-month mark, that number plummets to just over half. And if you look globally, it's even more stark. Less than 40% of babies are exclusively breastfed for the recommended 6 months. There's a massive disconnect here between what the experts recommend and what's actually happening.
And that disconnect, it has huge real-world consequences. It's estimated that if we could just optimize breastfeeding around the world, we could save the lives of 800,000 children every single year. That's a staggering number.
So here's the key point. This whole thing isn't just about those first 6 months. The benefits keep going, and in a lot of ways, they actually transform. Breast milk enters this powerful second act, where its role shifts from being just about nutrition to being about bioactive protection.
Okay, so what does the research actually say? Let's take a look at the evidence behind this protective power of prolonged breastfeeding.
This chart is great because it breaks it all down for us. Scientists basically sort the evidence into 3 categories: limited, probable, and the one we really care about, convincing. It helps us see just how certain we are about all these different benefits.
So let's focus on that top-tier convincing category. The science is solid here. We're talking about a lower risk for allergic diseases, for inflammatory bowel diseases like Crohn's, and even for childhood leukemia. The evidence is also convincing for better protection against everyday infections, for a boost in cognitive development, and for helping kids maintain a healthy weight. I mean, that is a seriously powerful list.
But how? How does it actually work? How can breast milk provide this kind of ongoing protection? Well, that brings us to its incredible role as an adaptive immune shield.
Okay, the most important thing you need to grasp is this. Breast milk is not a static recipe. It's a living, dynamic fluid. You should think of it less like a meal and more like a personalized, adaptive medicine that is constantly changing based on what your child needs at that exact moment.
All right, let's meet one of the heroes of this story. It's an antibody called secretory IgA, or SIgA for short. The absolute best way to picture SIgA is as an intelligent bodyguard. It literally coats the inside of your baby's gut and respiratory system, spotting and neutralizing germs before they can ever cause an infection.
And check this out. This is where the evidence gets absolutely mind-blowing. This chart shows the concentration of that SIgA bodyguard. So, in the first year, it's about 2.12 grams per liter. But after the second year, look at that jump. It more than triples, skyrocketing to over 7.55. The milk literally becomes a more concentrated dose of immune protection as the child gets older.
So we know these immune factors get way more concentrated. Now let's decode exactly how they deliver that protective power.
This diagram is basically our roadmap. It connects all the dots for us. On the left, you've got the active components in breast milk. In the middle, the biological process they trigger. And on the right, the actual health benefit.
Let's just follow one of these threads, okay? See where it says HMOs. These are super special sugars you only find in human milk. They're not for a baby's nutrition. Instead, they act as food for the good bacteria in the baby's gut. They help build a healthy gut microbiome, which, as we now know, is directly linked to a lower risk of developing allergies. It's such an elegant system.
And you know, this really gets to the heart of what makes breast milk so unique. It's a dynamic system, just packed with these living, bioactive components that change constantly. Infant formula, on the other hand, while it's an absolutely essential and life-saving alternative for so many, is a static product. It provides nutrition, for sure, but it just can't replicate this living, adaptive immune protection. Okay, but to give you the full story, we have to talk about the other side of the coin. It's important to look at the potential risks and, the gaps in the research we have so far. So the biggest risk that pops up in the research is all about dental health.
One major study found that breastfeeding for 24 months or longer was linked to a 2.4 times greater risk of severe cavities in early childhood.
But, and this is a really, really big but, the consensus among experts is clear. The massive array of health benefits we've talked about far, far outweighs this one risk, which, by the way, is totally manageable with good dental hygiene right from the start.
And it's also important to be totally honest about the limitations of the research itself. It can be really hard for studies to control for other factors, like socioeconomic status. Plus, a lot of the data we rely on is from older studies. So what that means is we still need more modern, really rigorous research to keep confirming and expanding on these findings.
All right, so let's boil this all down to the three big takeaways. First, breast milk is not static. It adapts and it actually gets more immunologically powerful over time. Second, the evidence is convincing that prolonged breastfeeding offers real protection against a whole list of infections and diseases. And third, while there's a small, manageable risk for dental health, the overall benefits are just overwhelmingly positive.
And all of that leaves us with this huge final question to think about. If we start to view breast milk not just as food, but as this living, adaptive biological system, how could that completely change our entire approach to infant nutrition and public health in the years to come?